Hello, everybody, and welcome to one of our Success Leaves Clues interviews, which I am delighted to say that I have Mr. Neill here from Ewemove. How are you, sir?
Very good, Simon. Thank you very much indeed. Yes.
Good stuff. Great to have you on. I'm really delighted to understand a little bit more. And I think what we're going to do today is just understand, as I said, what makes you tick as an individual, how you see business within the industry. That phrase, obviously, success leaves clues, is a common phrase out there. And I think one of the things we're really trying to understand across many different sort of types of agency in the business is, first of all, I suppose, what does success mean to you, Nick? And we're going to come back and we're going to look at you, go back over your history. But for you as an individual and everything else on that basis, what does success mean to you in an estate agency?
Okay, so in estate agency, for us, absolutely, and for me personally, it points to my background as well, which is why there is a nice fit between my journey and Ewemove's journey as well. It absolutely is around the customer. So customer outcomes, customer satisfaction, that is the key measure by which we hold ourselves accountable. And because there's absolutely no point having short-term success if your customers aren't happy with your service, because it is like a firework. You might enjoy some great success in the short term, but it doesn't last. So for any organization, if you look at those organizations around the world that have done exceptionally well and continue to do well, and they weather the storms of time, Disney, Toyota, these big names, they all have customers at the very, very heart of what they do. And short-term profitability, short-term actions don't come into play. You have to have an absolute focus on delivering what the customer needs, expects and wants, and making sure you hold yourself accountable to that.
I think that's really interesting. Both of those companies there, I happen to know, are massive aficionados, obviously, of Net Promoter Score, and you're more than aware of that. And that phrase comes up time and time again in that fantastic book, doesn't it? The important question or whatever it was, which is, you can have bad profits and good profits. You can do that. You can be extremely profitable and make that work for a short period of time. But it's not sustainable, is it? Whereas if you will, doing it sounds like the obvious thing. Listen to what your customer, understand, empathize what your customer does. Those are the good long-term profits that those companies have obviously nailed down time and time again, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I came up with something in my own head. I probably read it somewhere, but I claimed it as my own. And it's this concept of sales through service, and it's a policy I've followed in my own work life for many, many years, is that you can build sustainable revenue growth through selling additional products and tools to your customers on the back of a fantastic service delivery. Because that then engenders trust, it builds that trust relationship, and you then don't really have to work hard at selling, because you become an advisor and a recommender of things that are going to help your customer improve their lot and aid their business or their personal transaction. In estate agency, it's about getting to the next home and all this kind of stuff. So delivering the absolute service delivers trust, and then people then follow your advice, which then leads to additional sales and income.
I love that. That's a really so there's famous, there's software as a service, but sales as a service is something that really resonates. That does, in fact. Okay, that's and when do you think, when we were talking about Net Promoter Score, I think one of the things that some of the best people I found, is that they've instinctively been doing some of this stuff, haven't they? And then they realize, oh, that's what I was doing. That's why I was a success there. When were you aware of that kind of being part of your makeup and one of the reasons for your success?
Well, it goes right back to the mid-90s, Simon, a long time ago. So I worked for a company called First Direct, which was the first non-branch-based bank in the UK, and they opened their doors on Sunday, the 1st of October, 1989. So going way back, I joined them in 94. And they basically didn't employ anyone from the banking sector. To employ estate agents. So they want people who were 100% focused on the customer, because you can train the technical skills of banking and various other things, and we can do that in estate agency. And it brings a new culture, it brings a new way of thinking about how do you actually interact with customers. And we were very much of the view that, as a business at First Rate, we had to sell other products and services to our customers, but it was secondary to absolute focus on service delivery. So consequently, comes back to the kind of NPS sort of language, the general recommending rate for a customer of their high street bank was in the kind of 20s to 40s range of that many percent of customers would recommend their bank. First Rate was in the sort of mid to high 80s. So fundamentally different in terms of customer engagement. And I've taken that really what I've learned in terms of my customer service foundations really from First Direct into lots of other organizations that I've worked for. And, if we look at Ewemove as well, NPS is a good one. So we do ask every single customer that interacts with us to rate us on the NPS scale. And we have an NPS rating in the mid-40s, which for an estate agency is phenomenally good.
It really is, isn't it? I mean, it's a hard place to improve, but that for me then again sets the stall, doesn't it? Where actually, there's the best and the rest. The best are getting better and everything else there. And if you were to look at an industry, many times go to the ones that aren't being served particularly well. The customer service isn't there, because actually there's your opportunity to shine. And it sounds like that feels like that's where you're trying to carve your niche out.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that is a challenge for us, Simon, is how do we maintain that customer focus as we build our network? So, we've gone from a network of, sub 100 a few years ago, 50, 60 franchisees, built up to 100 or so. We'll end this year on 170. By the end of the next 3 years, we want to be at 400. So we will then undoubtedly be the biggest single brand estate agency in the UK. So that's our goal for Ewemove, and the challenge for me as well is to make sure that we're consistent with that service delivery over a bigger scale. And that's where we need to make sure our systems and processes support that. And it's an interesting observation. So I've come into the estate agency sector from outside the sector, so financial services, payment processing, fuel businesses, various different things. And you look at agency and you think, well, what's going wrong? And it's a case of process, because when I talk to estate agents, people who've worked in agency, they may be thinking of buying a Ewemove franchise, whatever it is, they might be working for an agency that doesn't actually score particularly highly in their customer service ratings. But all the individuals within that business are highly focused on the customer. Yeah. And this is where agents have a little bit of a misunderstanding about what they do and who they are and how they're presented. And it's the processes and the systems that those agencies have which stop people from delivering great service. And that's a shame, because very often when things go wrong, it isn't about the person, it's about the system or the process. So if you change and redesign your systems and processes to allow people to deliver a great service, then you're more than halfway there. You're not creating a rod for your own back.
I don't think you can have consistency, can you, without systems and processes?
No, you can't.
No. And that's often overlooked, isn't it? As you said, by definition, this industry engenders great salespeople, doesn't it? But salespeople are, on the whole, great operationally, suited naturally anyway to have those processes in place. So, if you can put those in place to support them, you're going to end up with the best of both worlds, aren't you?
Yeah, you are. And, we learned this from, Peter Knight, the Property Academy, Best Estate Agency Guide stuff. One of the things that I listened to Peter say a good few years ago now was one of the things that surprised him when they first started doing the mystery shopping was that over 50% of inquiries went unanswered. Yeah. So, and this demonstrates my point, because if you speak to an estate agent and ask them the question, do you deliver fantastic customer service? They will say yes, because the interactions they have are generally very good. And the customers, if you ask them, did you have a good service from that agent? They would say, yeah, they were really good. So the view of the agent is, I am delivering great service, but that's only to the people they interact with. What it doesn't take into account.
What they value, isn't it?
Yeah. So all the other people who've inquired but got no attention are not getting great service at all.
You absolutely hit one of the biggest bugbears I hear, and you hear it all the time. Almost every agent talk about, they're tire kickers. Well, yeah. Do you know what they're definitely going to be tire kickers if you don't respond to them? Yeah. Why are they going to keep fighting to get to your attention if you haven't bothered to respond to their initial inquiries.
Yeah, and and I kind of sum this particular point up by saying, if you've got a bit of time to waste and you're really, really bored, can you not think of a single thing to do other than make an inquiry to an estate agent? Now, in my world, that's not going to be the first thing on the top of my list. So I'll probably go down the pub or something. So
yeah, it's not. This isn't bucket list material, is it?
No, it's not.
No.
So therefore, anyone that's made an inquiry is not really a tire kicker, are they? They've made an inquiry because there's something has happened in their life, or they're thinking about involves the need to get in touch with an estate agent. They want to sell, they want to buy, they want to move, whatever it might be. So people might, yes, be at a very early stage, but if you nurture them carefully over time, which is where systems and processes come in, then at some point they will represent themselves as somebody that you can do a transaction with. And if you've ignored them 2 or 3 years ago, well, they ain't going to do business with you.
Of course not. I'd love that, Nick. I mean, that's really resonates for me. I don't know if you were talking about Peter Knight, but did you go to when he brought over Alexander Phillips being the number one, estate agent in Australia. And one of the things that jumped out for me, he was talking about there was he'd done the normal kind of beauty parade and gone around and seen some of the better agents over here in the UK. And one of the things to understand, how we operate, and I think he'd taken a lot up from like client services departments and things like that. The thing he couldn't understand though was that the just on an operational point of view is that portal leads were treated with absolute disdain, and he made the point that quite opposed to well, we're just going to ignore all those ones there. Every single one was put into their database, as he would have said back then, and they were nurtured, whether that was for today or tomorrow, because what he realized was that agents are so good at, doing the rock and roll sort of market appraisal when they've got the portal lead through. I want to sell now. Go into game mode, but you've built no trust, no brand recognition, have you there? Whereas if you deal with those ones over a few months, years, and stay in contact with them, you're going to be ahead of the curve, aren't you? And indeed ahead of the competition, if you are able to step up there. And I think that's a wonderful view to have. Really, is most people, or they talk about the importance of data, and we don't seem to have clued up to that.
No, we don't.
Treat it as a pain in the arse, don't we?
Yeah, that's right. And I think this is where, I'm going to sort of plug your business here a little bit, Simon, because, you've got access to all the tools and features that agents need. So the thing is, you only need to do it once and then a little bit of tinkering. So any agent, there's loads of tools out there, not necessarily relevant to estate agency market as a whole, but you've got things like HubSpot, Infusionsoft, various other auto email campaigns. So you can set up systems relatively easily, which mean you can harvest those portal leads on an automated basis. You can then write some nurture emails. You can link that in with automated text messaging. You can do all sorts of fancy things. And those customers get a response from you as an agent. And you haven't even done anything. That can happen at 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning, whatever it is. And the customer's got a response. And it's these such simple things that, smaller, independent agents, whatever it might be, who make up the bulk of our market, either don't have the time, inclination, or thought to put in place. But if they did, it would up their game relatively quickly and easily and very cheaply.
I was just going to ask you why they didn't do it, and you just summarised that there. Do you think the main reason is it's just the time and inclination, or is it just that they didn't know that these tools exist? I think we're past that stage, aren't we? Most people are aware that those tools are out there. I suspect, though, one of the things that I've loved about your approach is that you do clearly, and I understand that better now as well, because you have shown yourself demonstrable to take ideas from outside of industry, and that's when it gets much more exciting, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I suppose one of the problems we have is that, like many industries, when it becomes en masse, it's when it's keeping up with the Joneses. But for those early adopters to first of all say, okay, well, I can see a system there that needs to be honed to a state agency, but it does take some work to do that in the first instance, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely. And this is where we do have an advantage. So clearly, as a franchised organisation, our individual local independent agents, who each have their own business, they don't need to worry about this stuff because we do it for them. And that's the benefit of scale. So those bigger corporate organizations have got teams of people in marketing and IT and various things who've got the time and space to go away and develop how you deploy and implement these things, which is why, I come back to the small independents, can talk to somebody like yourself and get some guidance and help with it, because they won't have those resources to do it for them. And quite honestly, one of the biggest mistakes independent business owners make, whether you're a plumber or an electrician or an estate agent, is trying to do everything for themselves when you're not going to get the best outcome. So go and talk to people who know about the sort of thing that you're interested in. Ask them to implement and deploy it. Yes, spend a few quid on it, but it will serve you very well over the longer term.
Well, thank you very much for that plug anyway. Genuinely, that was very kind. It wasn't intended, but I think the most important thing is understanding what is possible there, and then understanding those companies that can help and facilitate.
Yep.
So you can do it every stage, can't you? You said you're lucky enough, you've got of a size of scale that you can do this stuff, and you can do it in a very, very individualistic manner. But there are companies out there that will allow you to outsource this. And yes, it's a bit more out of the box, but the important thing is to be doing it. It's that old phrase, isn't it? Stop being, what is it, perfect getting in the way of better.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Yeah.
So many people go for that. We're waiting for this holy grail solution, and it's just like, make baby steps and you'll be amazed at what difference that makes just from day dot.
Yeah, small incremental change is absolutely the way to go, because you can test and learn, and sometimes things aren't going to work, and that's why we do lots of things that don't work, and that's good. So now we know for sure, as opposed to just thinking we know, which is a big difference. And I've read many times criticism of Ewemove and so on about employing people from outside of the industry, and these people don't know what estate agency is. And, and I thank God we've taken those people on who don't know what estate agency is, because I do not want to kind of sort of be really harsh here about, fall down to the level of substandard service. Yeah. We've got a different aspiration, and people from outside of the sector understand what customer service can mean in other sectors. Yeah. So they bring that higher level of expectation, and then we teach them how to be good estate agents. And, whilst, if we're talking about recruitment, estate agents who we bring into Ewemove tend to start more quickly and get success more quickly over a short period of time, 6-9 months. You can't tell the difference between them. So I think this is the other thing that existing agents need to think about, is who are they hiring and from where? Because just being a time-served agent is not the reason to hire somebody, because they could be full of so many bad habits. And this goes right back to the first directive. They would not hire bankers because they didn't want the mindset of a banker getting in the way of great service.
I was just going to say to you, very different businesses, but actually a massive similarity you have is with a company such as Foxtons, who famously, don't go and get other agents on the whole, do they? Because they don't want to have people with, as you said there, pre-formulated ideas and everything else. They want to bring them up in the culture of the business. As I said, you two are very different cultures. Yep. But there's the same basis there. And another company I know we both love, Moneypenny as well, who they give their team members cards, don't they? Essentially recruitment cards, so that if they spot somebody, whether that's a barista in a coffee shop or somebody there who has what they think is that, is that special secret source of customer service, they can give them that and say, look, if you ever obviously want to talk to us, we'd love to do that. I think that's such a wonderful thing to be able to impress upon them. And it's that classic one, isn't it? Is hire for attitude, train for skill, which is
exactly
is an overused phrase there. But those companies that show themselves at the forefront genuinely practice that, don't they?
Absolutely, they do. Yeah, very much so. And the attitude is so key, because people are absolutely capable of, really flourishing in the role if you give them the right framework to work within and the right objectives, and allow them to use their skills and their attitudes and the knowledge piece you can plug in any organization. It doesn't really matter. So having the right people who match the culture of your organization, have the right focus on the customer, is the most important thing. Everything else you can train to.
So another reason that obviously that I have you on the show so often is that I am a shameless, as you know, award whore. And you were talking there about Peter Knight, and I know for many years he's banged the drum, and one of the things that's fantastic about Peter, he's never afraid to, to step away from the sort of the standard view of things. And he was making the point when they kept looking at what Ewemove were doing and the statistics, ignoring whatever your perception of is on those, some of those key metrics, call answering, mystery shopping, how they were dealt with there. Time and time again, Ewemove were coming out, and that's why, I see you. It's a good job you've got long legs, because you have to trail towards that stage, don't you? And what is it? You've picked it up now for the large one, haven't you? A number of times over the last.
Yeah. So the best national UK letting agent, and that's that's hard to do, to please tenants and landlords and manage properties all across the UK consistently. I think we've had that now for 2 or 3 years, and 3 years actually, that one.
Yes, yeah.
And best UK sales agency as well, the best national UK sales agency. We didn't get one this year, but we won that last year. Because again,
you've got to give the others a chance.
You've got to give them a chance. You've got to give them a chance. Yeah. But the point is that really, excuse the French, pisses me off, and that's a good thing, because that's the driver to continually focus on being the best that we possibly can be. And we know that there's things that we can do. So we're just going through our next evolution of technology upgrades. So over the years, all the sort of tech and USBs we've had, others have caught up. So off-the-shelf software providers, individual agents, they're kind of thinking, well, actually, this stuff exists now, so we can jump on the bandwagon. So booking appointments on the website and things like that. So our next level of tech upgrade will take us to the next level, and that should
very exciting.
It is very exciting. So midway through 2022, we should be there or thereabouts, and then that will give us a platform for growth and further innovation.
If I remember rightly, you had obviously it had to be a fantastically named. You had Eureka, which was essentially supporting all of those slightly different processes and everything else, and so that's going to be essentially, it's the next stage of that evolution, as you see, where customer service needs to be driven.
That's right. And so Eureka 2, innovatively named.
Sometimes you can relax, can't you? You don't have to be hugely innovative every time.
No, you don't. Well, the thing is, what else can you do with that? So EWE for Eureka, those that don't know, but that's it. But it's an important point, actually, because technology can be used in a number of different ways. So we talked about tech to engage with customers on an automated bulk scale, and it can be seen as quite detached. So agents might think, well, I want to have a personal interaction with my customers, and that's quite right too. You should.
I hear that all the obviously my previous CRM is, we have a real customer service ethos. We talk to our clients. They're really fundamentally missing what the point of technology does for them, aren't they?
Exactly. Yeah. But they're not talking to the ones they don't manage to get on the phone. That's the important thing. So what we do, we have a kind of philosophy for our tech is, rather than have a technology layer, which is a barrier to that customer interaction. So if you think about customer tech layer person, and you might assign that to the likes of Purple Bricks and so on, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a perfectly legitimate business model, and that's what they do. We have it the other way around. So we have customer person tech layer. So our technology supports our franchisees. And what we want that to do is to minimize the time they spend on admin and low value add tasks, so that we can maximize the time they spend with those customers. So those customers have, been nurtured on an automated basis and all that sort of stuff. So we've been in touch with them, and all those automated nurtures appear to come from the individual local agent. It's not a centralized thing. So it's very, very personal. And then when the customer's ready to make the move, we haven't just suddenly turned up, like you talked about earlier. So we've been talking to that customer on a personal basis, although the franchisee wasn't having to do any work on that at all. We do it for them. And then they spend their time sitting on sofas, signing up business, because that helps them grow their revenue and their business. That's what it's all about. And our tech takes all of the noise and time away from things that don't add a lot of value.
Absolutely love that. So I'm hearing in my ear again the likes of Peter Knight and other gurus. Essentially, what that's enabling you to do is let the tech do the heavy lifting and let the teams, the people, do the most dollar productive activities. That's absolutely nail on the head, isn't it? So I love that. How much do you think you are helped? And I mean, obviously one supporting the other, but you mentioned there as well is that because you've got so that you're, it's much more of an individualistic nature. How much is that helped by the fact that, the people are real people and that technology promotes them as well out there? Do you think that gives you that advantage over some of the more traditional based, who are still pushing brand over individual?
Absolutely, 100%. So, people talk about Ewemove and the marketing, and they say, "Oh, I don't like the green sheep. I don't want to work for a company that markets a green sheep," and all that sort of stuff. But they're missing the point. Absolutely missing the point. So the green sheep helps us get that customer's attention. So we've got a whole load of marketing that we deploy for our franchisees, which gets the customer's attention to the Ewemove brand and the Ewemove proposition and all that sort of stuff. But from that point onwards, it's not about the green sheep, it's about the individual. So it's about that local franchisee. So we want to build a connection between, let's say Russell Burrington in Devon and the customer who wants to sell in Devon. And absolutely the relationship will be between those two people on a one-to-one basis. Ewemove, the sheep and all that subsides away into the background at that point because it's not needed anymore. So it's very much about the individual in their local town being the person who customers can connect with. So this then plays back to our business model, our structure. So if you take a normal high street estate agent, you might have 100 properties on the books, maybe not today because stock's in short supply, but let's say normally that might be the case. And you might have 5 staff members in that business. So that might be a normal ratio. So essentially you've got 20 properties per staff member. But they're all doing a bit of work on all of those 100 properties. So some are taking calls, some are doing vals, some are doing viewings or not, some are talking to customers, some are negotiating offers, but they're doing that work across the whole 100. We turn that on its head, or through 90 degrees, depending on how you look at it. So if we've got 5 people in a business with 100 properties, they're managing 20 each from start to finish. And that is a massive, massive difference. So each of those selling customers and buying customers on the sales side only speak to one person all the time about everything. But
it's real people. It's not just being passed from pillar to post and everything else there. So they know that and they build that. And of course, then it comes down to the old relationship game then, doesn't it?
It does. And this is why we need people from outside the industry who have perhaps got some skills in other sectors, because, you might think, well, how do I take somebody out of school or college and enable them to do valuations, offer negotiations, and the whole gambit of sales and service throughout that property transaction? Well, it's really hard, and that's probably why people don't do it. But we're selling a franchise to somebody who wants to build their own business, and they are the lead person in that business. Consequently, they do have the skills and capabilities to take the customer through that end-to-end journey. And therefore, the customers absolutely love the experience, both on the selling and buying side, tenants and landlords too. And so much so that people have had, when they're selling, such bad experience with their local agencies, they then switch to Ewemove. They love it so much, they become franchisees. So we've got franchisees in our business that are from our customer community. That's how much they love the process that we deliver.
And you're a trailblazer in so many different ways. And let me just think about, that's not a smoke blowing exercise, by the way, in terms of genuine, because the one thing that the pandemic and lockdown has taught us, isn't it, is that people have really, it's accelerated everything, as people would say there, haven't they? And that need to be, or desire to deal with companies they like and connect with has never been greater, has it?
No.
And so, as you said, that individual nature there, and look, we'll have seen as well as just the trailblazer element there is. Do you feel like you've enabled the other businesses? Of course, we see now the likes of the EXPs, we see the likes of Keller Williams, of course, who are doubling down as well, aren't they? But I don't think they could have done that really without you kind of setting the stall there, could they?
Well, I mean, it'd be very flattering to think not. I mean, Keller Williams and so on has been around for since the late 70s, started in America, global organization. So, they very much had that model, if you like. It didn't really work in the UK because no one really understood it. And no one really understood non-high street agency in the UK pre-COVID either. But obviously, as people have gone into lockdown, we've been through that COVID process. All businesses have had to operate from home. Whether you're a plumber or an electrician or an estate agent or whatever. And therefore customers have become more accepting of those kind of weird, probably more informal business interaction. So I don't have to go down the high street shop and have a very formal interaction anymore. I can speak to somebody on Zoom and they're going to be at home and I'm going to be at home, and that doesn't matter anymore. But pre-COVID, it probably did matter because
it feels almost like there was an Emperor's New Clothes moment, wasn't it? Where it's like, God, and actually, I know this categorically because you see how many traditional businesses have now gone down the hub route, and they probably wouldn't have gone down just that hub route as stage one, because clearly their competition would have said, "Oh, they're downsizing, can't be good." But actually, it's enabled them to do that without probably people staring and pointing and everything else. But I've accelerated again because actually, do you know what? It's just good business sense.
Yeah, it is. And if you're in a high street, and you make your shop a place of experience, then absolutely, there's a good business strategy there. That really is. But if you've turned your high street shop into an operational centre and you just got a load of people sat behind desks on the phone, and nobody's there to greet the customer when they come in and make them feel special, well, you're actually doing a disservice.
You've got the worst of both worlds, if that is
you have. You got a high cost and no service. So if you're focused on an experiential outcome for somebody going into your shop, then brilliant, that's really good. But if you're not, don't have a shop, because what's the point otherwise? And even the likes of Apple, classic, their shops are experience. It's about interacting with the product and all that kind of stuff. And they've got people on hand to help and advise and sort your problems out.
To go and see the guru at the end.
Yeah, that's right. And it becomes a destination in its own right, and a place to go and a place to experience. And you see lots of different brands and shops doing this sort of stuff now. But just having a transactional store isn't working for anyone. It doesn't matter what sector you're in right now.
No, it's interesting you're talking about Eureka too, and you can't give me your trade secrets because obviously that would be insane. But where do you see the evolution of that next stage of sort of in estate agency itself per se? Where do you think we're going to? Which industries do you think we'll borrow from or try to replicate, or do you think it's just we're seeing now? Because it really is such an exciting time now. You have got on one end, you've got traditional agencies, you've got boutique agencies coming up, you've got the individuals, so never has there been more varied type of businesses for the consumer to do with. Where do you think it's going to go?
Oh, that's a big question, Simon.
We can record 4 different things if you like.
Yeah, we could, couldn't we? Yeah. Then I'll say that I got it right.
The oracle.
I'll have just aged for a couple of years, until I get it right. Yeah. But I mean that therein lies the beauty of it. I mean, if we go back 20 years to the turn of the century, sat nav, mobile phones, the internet, all of these things that we take for granted right now, including Rightmove, all of these things started. Could we have predicted where we are right now? Well, in some ways, we haven't changed much. There's still estate agents on the high street, and whoopie-doo, happy days, that still works to a certain extent. But technology and how people live their lives and what they consume has changed beyond all recognition. So what's going to happen over the next 20 years, not entirely sure. However, we don't really need to predict too much as long as you remain adaptable. And I think it's Charles Darwin who said, it's not the fittest that survive, it's the most adaptable. So if we use technology to enable ourselves to be fleet of foot and keep responding to customer demands, then we will continue to grow and remain profitable and a solid business.
And it really does show how robust the industry was when it was hit, as many industries were. And yes, it was given the get out of jail card because it was allowed to trade quite quickly and more ahead of everyone else. But when it was that car crash, literally people were laying off staff. They were thinking it was 2008 all over again. Agency got its head, got its shit together very quickly. Virtual viewings, appraisals, everything else. Well, tools came out that enabled people to trade in a matter of weeks, didn't they?
They did. Well, I mean, this is interesting because all of our systems are cloud-based, and they have to be because, we have a distributed network and we've got people working from home, shops, offices, doesn't really matter. So you can work in a cafe, you can work at home, you can work in a shop, you can work at the airport, doesn't really matter. As long as you've got connection to the internet, you can get everything you need as in terms of your Ewemove business. So we had that already going into lockdown. Yeah. So when we went into lockdown, nothing really changed.
Not much changed, is it? Yeah, I can imagine that in terms of.
No, so we could still talk to our customers, and we still did. And I think we were probably the first agent to fully list the property virtually. So we listed a property, customer did a video tour, we did viewings by video tour, we took offers, sold the property. It completed all through virtual transaction. And we didn't need to introduce any new technology to allow that to happen. All we had to do is train the customer to walk around the house with an iPhone. That's pretty much it. Yeah. So that was really good. And then you get the sort of traditional high street operators who've got hard installed systems in their shop. You know, it's a hard telephony system, a hard install on computer systems. So trying to then operationalize that business across, you know, all of their staff working from home is impossible because no one could log on, no one could get access to data. So those businesses really did take a hit. So this comes back to our conversation at the beginning of this call is, you know, what tech is important? What do you need to do? So yes, tech to communicate with your customers and nurture them, but also tech to remain your business to operate in. Yeah. So it's so important.
And that's taking it back onto a more personal level, Nick, in terms of you strike me as being just a really empathetic character. What type of boss are you in terms of how do you get the best out of your people? Am I getting it wrong? You suddenly turn into this bullying sort of
tyrant? Yeah.
What makes you tick, and how do you get the most out of your teams?
Well, I've always had the philosophy that, you know, I'm not the guy with all the good ideas. So if you enable your team to work, so it's first of all about having the team understand what the key objective is. Yep. You also need to understand as kind of the boss that everyone has different characteristics, different strengths, different development needs, and so on. So allowing people to really draw on the things that they're good at and supporting them where they need some additional support is the way to do it. So it's that collaboration and understanding about what some people are good at and not. And I will have a meeting with my sort of team and we will talk about, you know, oh, we all know that so-and-so doesn't like that or prefers to do this. Not negative, isn't good at, but whatever. So what can we do as a team to help and support that particular shortcoming, if that's right. Yeah. So everyone in the team, no one's getting any blame for being you know, not good at a certain task, and no one's getting too much kudos about being great at another task. It's about how do we collectively deploy our skills to reach the objective.
That really strikes me. Is you don't need people then hiding, do you? They're not going to be afraid to step up and make, you know, to make statements because they're not going to get shouted down by the.
Yeah, that's right. And consequently, you know, you've kind of got a good team when they take the piss out of you as a boss, and that's good.
If one of my morning meetings didn't start off with the team not taking the piss out of it, then I think I'll be doing something wrong.
That's right. Yeah.
So I mean, actually, I was talking about before. I was thinking about this. You know, those people that again take the shot at the you know the whole Ewemove, the brand and everything else. And I mean, I loved, you know, Head Shepherd, everything else. In fact, I probably have to pay you lot deference. Chief Kerfuffle must have come somewhere, you know, shamelessly as well. I've never had a new idea. I must have just stolen really that whole angle from you. So I should probably apologize and give you some sort of kudos somewhere. So on the back of that. In terms of what you look for in team members, I mean, clearly that's customer. We've already dealt with this. That customer service ethic is got to be at its absolute core. So when you're looking at your sort of org chart, though, in terms of there, do you look at that in terms of how do you look at it? Do you look in terms of the type of personality you're there, or do you still look at it from a very traditional point of view? Is, you know, we need an ops manager or something else? How do you put the square pegs into round holes or vice versa?
Well, actually, we probably don't try and force square pegs into round holes. So my IT guy, Andy, you know, absolutely brilliant technical person, what he doesn't know about IT, is not worth knowing. So we're really delighted to have him on the team in terms of helping us in our next stage of tech development. That's really, really good. But he wouldn't regard himself as, a people person, but actually, as Andy's been working with us for a few years now, he's become much more of a people person, because that's the organization that we have. And so much so, when he's interviewing for a new staff member, he said, I think they're good technically, but I'm not sure they'll fit with the culture. So I have an interview with an IT person, not because I understand IT particularly, but to make sure they are a good culture fit, because that trumps pretty much everything else. So if they're not going to fit within the team, it's not going to work. And it's really quite interesting. You get somebody from a highly binary technical perspective, recognizing the value and the importance of the team culture that we have. And that's not only...
IT always gets put by itself, isn't it? They're different creatures. I mean, famously, the IT crowd, they were at the very basement, weren't they?
That's right.
The business, sort of, no one ever went down there to
that's right. But they're an integral part of the team. So we talked a lot about tech. So, our marketing guys and our ops guys say, we need tech to do this, to do that, to automate, to do whatever. And, it's fantastic. I mean, to give you an idea, Simon, about how this works, we manage in Ewemove 3,000 rental properties, and we do all of the rent collection. We do all of the statementing, all of the client accounting, all of the deposit management, you name it, we do everything. And we do that with about 2.5 FTE. And, when I talk to external companies who say that they can do it better for us, they're talking about, 10 to 15 FTE to do the level of work we do with 2.5. And it's because we've got the systems and the processes.
I mean, these are the metrics you just can't disagree with, can you, in terms of when we're getting back down to the essentials and everything else? Yeah, that's fascinating. And how do you develop your team members? Is there a strong, do you essentially let them self-develop themselves, or do you still think that there's a strong part for Ewemove to help bring people on? What does the training and development look like in your mind?
Yeah, and it's very much individual. So coming back to the recruitment thing, so what kind of people are we looking for? So firstly, it's people that fit with the culture, but secondly, it's people that want to work in a growth organization, because that's quite a different feeling to working in a static organization. Because static is really boring and everyone knows what they're doing, nothing changes much. And there's people that like that environment, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that's fine. I probably suggest to go
horses for courses.
Exactly, yeah. Suggest to go and work for the council. But anyway, and then you've got people that need to work in a change environment, and some people don't like change. Some people absolutely relish change. So people have got to be willing and able to adapt very, very quickly to our changing organisation, the demands that our franchisees place on us for additional support, new ideas, all these kinds of things. And, we don't want to be saying, well, we can't do that because we've always done it like this. That's a phrase you never, ever hear within our organisation. And so it's finding people that are able to adapt and change. And therefore, what support and development do they need? Well, that really depends on the individual. So, my designer guy, Tom, he's been with us since the very start. He came into the organisation as an apprentice straight out of school. And a lot of the graphics and images that you'll see on social media and leaflets and all that, he designs. And he's self-taught. It's absolutely fantastic. So really, really good job. But we're funding him now through a university course, so he can go through some formal learning and education qualifications. And that's a multi-year investment from us and from him, and that's appropriate for him as an individual. Because as we grow our PLC organisation, I want to broaden out his exposure to other brands. So it helps aid what's written on his own CV. So I kind of talk to people about, when you go for your next job, what's it going to say on your CV? Yeah. And that's the conversation which drives out development, because I don't want them going to their next job with a bland, boring CV with nothing to say. So that helps me get value from them today and over the next few years. And it also says that I'm happy to help them develop as an individual, because if they get to a stage where there isn't a job opportunity within our PLC business for them, I don't want them going stale. That's not good for me, it's not good for them. So I'm quite happy for them to go somewhere else.
See, you're so much more forward thinking than me. They're dead to me once they. I'm very old school on that.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I want to say a phrase that says, "Well, if you train your staff to be superstars, they all leave."
Yeah.
But then the reverse of that is if you don't, they all stay.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay, I mean, just so one of the things that I understood as well from I think I got this. I didn't make this up. With Eureka in the early days, you really, again, you guys were ahead of the curve in, look, you still do the portals and everything else, but you've seen the advantage of social media, haven't you, way before I think it started to resonate. So I work with Paul Long, who I think is absolutely fantastic now. But my understanding of Eureka, didn't your franchisees have the ability to essentially tweak how much they wanted to spend on social to maximize the kind of adverts and things like that? Did I make that up, or is that?
No, you're absolutely right. So we have what we call the lean green marketing machine. There we go.
Beautiful. Yeah. No.
And when you buy a franchise, you're buying a franchise for known processes, systems, all that kind of stuff. So yes, we talked about the tech. Yes, we talked about the product and the service proposition, and all of those things are kind of out the box. That's what the franchise is. But also it includes a marketing know-how. So the lean green marketing machine says, this is what we know works. So deploy these things in this way and at this level of spend, and you will generate leads, which are then nurtured and automatically qualified, and you'll jump into phone calls and all that stuff with those leads as well. That nurtures them through the conversion pipeline until they become customers, and that's where you generate revenue and so on and so on. So it's just that kind of sausage machine of stuff. And the lean green marketing machine is part of it. And within that, of course, there are local variations. So people might skew further towards social. And actually, this points right back to the issue we talked about before. The local business is fronted by the local business owner, the franchisee, not the green sheep. And if they're very, very heavily skewed towards social, and the likes, if you look at Ewemove Leighton Buzzard, or Ewemove Long Eaton and Nottingham, and Ewemove Oakham, Market Harborough, these guys spring to mind. They're very, very social focused. So they will put more of their budget to social because that's where they are. And that's where their customers are.
What's wonderful there is it doesn't have to be a one size fits all. That again would work well. So people, they get themselves, they understand their local marketplace, what works best, and they can double down on that if they need to.
That's right. And if they're not into social, so let's say some of our older members of our community are maybe not so focused on social by their own admission as well. Well, that's fine. They don't need to invest too much money in social. They can put their money towards PPC, more traditional kind of styles of marketing as well. But it all points back to feeding people through the ewemove.com website, which is optimized to convert online valuations, which then lead through to valuations and so on. So it doesn't really matter where we harvest those leads from. Franchisees can deploy the tools we know works in a way that is super refined for their own local area and them personally. That's the key thing. And then that drives leads into the business.
Fascinating. Good. Well, I'm glad sometimes I make things up in my head, and there's these whaley whispers actually take on a lot of time, but I'm glad that was based in reality for once. That's great. So, I mean, in terms of the success leads clues, it's fantastic listening to you in terms of what makes you different there. Where do you take your inspiration from? So, for example, are there particular books that have been a game changer for you that you've sort of based your philosophy around, or has it been around people? Where does your inspiration come from?
That's a very big question. So, books. There's lots of books that I have read around business, and I do a lot of audio books more now because,
is that down to attention span like myself?
It's the commute. If you're driving an hour each way, you might as well listen to an audio book.
They genuinely are fantastic, aren't they? I mean, things like Audible and that, buying into that. And what does Tom Panos calls it? It's the university in your car, then, isn't it? And it's really
it is. Absolutely. And there's good books. I mean, I encourage my kids to read Rich Dad Poor Dad because that's really good, and that tells people about how to actually manage money and invest. And it's very relevant to franchisees as well. And there's a book that I encourage new franchisees to look at. It's very similar. It's more like a pamphlet than a book, but it's a book, and it's called The Dip. And again, when my son and my daughter went to university, I talked to them about the dip. And when you go through a substantial change in career, job, business, whatever, you go through this kind of peak of ecstasy and excitement, and everything's brilliant. And then, reality hits in and you go down like a roller coaster, in a pit of despair, thinking, oh, have I made the mistake, and all this sort of stuff.
If people don't get that in the home moving experience, you're going to be very surprised, aren't you? Because
that's right. And
waves, isn't it?
Yeah, and I learned this first direct. People would come out of training, they'd be on absolute high, and 6 months later they'd be really down in the dumps because reality hits in. And until you normalize your new reality, it can be quite oppressive, and it doesn't matter what it is. Yeah. And like going to university away from home, burden of work, whatever it might be, and all the fun social stuff was like Freshers Week, that's gone now. You're now focused on reality, and it can be quite burdensome. But if you understand it's perfectly natural to go through this peak and dip, then you can navigate your way out of it and actually control how you respond.
It's about the expectation, isn't it? It's about taking the surprise out of it. I mean, one of the things we've struggled for, and I probably was guilty of this in my old place, is that, I feel a lot of sympathy for a number of suppliers out there, because actually, the competitors in the CRM space, it's not per se worrying about MRI or about Spectre. It's about the intransigence of agents not wanting to make the move. And being able, a large part of that is the salesperson is trying to sell it, but not get into the oversell, part of it. And the minute that they try to make it look really realistic and, it's going to be quite a few months before this settles down, that's just going to make the agent, put it on the back burner again. But actually what they haven't, is understand and get across the opportunity cost, that if you don't make this move, it's far more damaging to do that. And that's where I think our role comes in, where we can be realistic in terms of just being said, look, some projects are bigger than other, a website, a CRM, an EDM solution are the big ones. But when you're on the other side of that, all that great stuff you've been talking about becomes possible, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, absolutely. And it's the same with like books and continuous learning and all this sort of stuff. If you don't continually stretch yourself, your business, your processes, fitness, whatever else it is, then you just go backwards. Because there is no
the last one, but I get your point of view. And what about individuals, Nick? In terms of, are there particular people within the industry that you take inspiration from, or is this very much you trying to create something new outside of the box?
Well, it is about continuing, because I feel that my responsibility is to continue the ethos of the founders of Ewemove, which is this very different customer-centric approach.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting listening to Peter, and I've got a lot of time for Peter. He kind of gets that and eschews that kind of framework the whole time. Yes. And I'm actually very fortunate right now to have a CEO in our organization, Gareth Samples. He's been in the industry for many years. Yeah. And by his own admission, when I first met with Gareth and explained what Ewemove is, how it works and all this sort of stuff, he said, I'm ashamed to say I didn't know that. I've been in this business for a long time. Yeah. And I didn't really understand Ewemove. And I think that's the challenge we have with the existing agency sector audience who we talk to. They don't really understand what we're doing or why. But to be fair to Gareth, he is absolutely focused on the same objectives that I am in terms of building the business in a customer-centric way with technology and all that stuff. So, but he's got a huge amount of experience because he's built his own network before, because he built the Ewemove business, the Ewemove business. So it's really good. So, I've kind of got almost an advisor mentor right on hand.
Look, I'm biased. I think Gareth, again, he's one of those unique people within the industry, because actually he's done the prop tech side of things as well. Yeah. So he understands the supplier relationships and the importance of technology. So that's really, yeah, you are. I think you've got a really strong skill set of people at the very top, which clearly comes across in the way that the business is obviously doing so well there. But I think that that's interesting, isn't it? That sometimes that's your challenge, is to get across, but it's probably also a bit of a secret sauce, isn't it? Because people if they don't understand you, they won't know how to. You've got to understand something and empathize before you can really know how to compete with something, can't you?
Yeah, that's right. And I think very often in life, whether it's in work or estate agents or elsewhere, people think they know what something is and make a decision based on it rather than find out the facts. We see it in politics, see it on the news. People make decisions based on an emotional thought. Yes. Brexit's a classic example of that on a huge scale. Is people think, well, I think I know everything I need to know about my Brexit choice, so I'm going to vote Remain or Leave. Doesn't really matter. Yeah, but let's face it, nobody knew on either side what the real detail was. But yet people are very willing and believe firmly that they know enough to make the right decision. And so that's on a huge scale. In agency space, people think they know what Ewemove is, but actually they don't.
Well, I feel like I've got, I mean, one thing I tell you what, you've totally reasserted and changed my position on is, I was thinking that we were going to be just doing these success clues interviews and just leaving it at one. We're going to be coming back for a follow-up on this, because I could talk to you for hours, but I think you might start crying if I carried on. Absolutely fascinating listening to you, Nick. And genuinely, you're one of the most interesting people in the industry. So let me just get rid of that. Yeah, you're definitely one of the most interesting people in the industry, and again, it comes across so clearly with the brand and everything else around it. So, congratulations. I want to obviously, I'm still going to keep watching you win all those awards and everything else. That's really important. But for your time today, thank you for sharing with us.
You're very welcome. Good to talk to you.
Cheers.